You're standing in the marble halls of the imperial palace in Rome around the year 39 AD. The air is thick with incense and fear. Servants move in silence, eyes lowered, terrified of drawing attention. And then he appears. The young Emperor Caligula, only in his 20s, draped in flowing silks, jewels glittering in the torchlight. He's smiling, laughing even. But the people around him shiver because everyone knows that smile can turn into violence at any moment. This is the story of Rome's most infamous ruler, an emperor whose reign began with hope, but spiraled into one of the most disturbing spectacles of power, cruelty, and madness the ancient world ever witnessed. Before we dive into the forgotten horrors of Caligula's court, if you love uncovering the dark secrets of history, consider hitting that like button and subscribing. And tell me in the comments, where are you listening from? I find it incredible that across the world, we're piecing together these ancient stories connected by our shared curiosity about the past. Now, let's begin. Caligula wasn't born a monster. In fact, when he first took power, the people of Rome adored him. He was the great-grandson of Augustus, the founder of the empire, and the son of the beloved general Germanicus. His childhood nickname, Caligula, meant little boots, a term of endearment from the soldiers who watched him grow up in their camps. When he became emperor at just 24, Rome breathed a sigh of relief. After years of tension under Tiberius, here was a fresh face, young, charismatic, and seemingly generous. He freed political prisoners, restored festivals, and gave away money to the public. For a brief moment, it seemed like a golden age had arrived. But absolute power does strange things. And within a year, the man once called Little Boots became something else entirely. A figure who blurred the line between man and God, ruler and madman. What changed him? Some say it was a near-death illness that left him physically weakened but mentally unhinged. Others believe the pressures of ruling an empire broke his mind. But whatever the cause, the transformation was swift and terrifying. At first, the signs seemed harmless, even eccentric. Caligula demanded to be worshipped not just as emperor, but as a living god. He had temples dedicated to himself, where priests sacrificed animals in his honor. He even placed golden statues of himself in sacred shrines, forcing Romans to bow before them. But then came the cruelty. Caligula developed a taste for humiliation, making senators run beside his chariot, kissing his feet in public, or addressing him as if he were Jupiter himself. At banquets, he would laugh as nobles groveled for his attention, knowing their lives depended on his mood. And then, disturbingly, Caligula's obsession turned inward, to his own family. Ancient sources whisper about his unnatural fixation on his sisters, especially Drusilla, whom he allegedly treated as a consort. When she died suddenly, Caligula ordered the empire into mourning as if she were an empress, declaring her a goddess and keeping her memory alive in ways that made Rome deeply uneasy. The cruelty escalated. He drained the treasury on absurd spectacles, constructing floating palaces on ships, hosting feasts where guests were suddenly ordered to kill themselves, and even waging a mock war against the sea itself. According to Suetonius, he once commanded his soldiers to collect seashells as spoils of war after a fake battle with Neptune, god of the ocean. But the most chilling stories aren't the jokes, they're the punishments. Caligula would invite men to dinner, laugh with them, and then on a whim, have them executed before dessert. He enjoyed watching suffering as if it were theater. To him, human lives were props in the grand play of his power. Imagine being a Roman senator in that environment. Every word, every glance, every gesture could be misinterpreted and cost you your life. Servants lived in constant terror. Families prayed their daughters wouldn't catch the emperor's eye. The palace itself became less a home and more a haunted stage, where laughter and screams mingled in the marble halls. By 41 AD, Rome could take no more. The Praetorian Guard, once sworn to protect him, plotted his assassination. On a cold January morning, Caligula entered a theater to greet performers. There, hidden in the shadows, assassins struck. The emperor, who demanded worship as a god, fell, bleeding in the corridors of his own palace. He was just 28 years old. The Senate rejoiced. The people celebrated. And yet the stories of his cruelty lived on. not just as gossip, but as warnings. Because Caligula's reign wasn't only about madness. It was about what happens when one man is given absolute power with no restraints. When grief, obsession, and paranoia are left unchecked. When a ruler stops seeing his people as humans and starts seeing them as toys. Caligula's life remains one of the most haunting chapters of Roman history. He began as Little Boots, the boy adored by soldiers. He ended as a living nightmare, a man who turned the empire into his stage, his citizens into actors, and his own madness into the script. And just like with Sporus under Nero, what lingers isn't only the violence, but the human cost, the countless lives broken, the trust shattered, the reminder that power without accountability always ends in tragedy. So the next time you hear his name, don't just think of the wild rumors. Think of the people who lived in fear under his rule, the servants who whispered in shadows, the senators who prayed they would survive another day. History remembers Caligula as a monster, but perhaps the real horror is that he was also a man. Proof that under the wrong circumstances, the line between leader and tyrant can vanish in an instant.